Folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast Livestream. It's been a few days. We had a few days off for the Thanksgiving holiday here in the States. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and your loved ones, and really a time to be thankful to God. For me, I mean, as an American now more than ever, where I truly believe, folks, I say with that hesitation, that God Almighty has given us a golden opportunity, another chance in this country where I'm sitting right now, the United States, to turn things around and turn back to him. So I'm thankful for that and optimistic and excited about what lies ahead. And, I was thinking about the last few New Year's. A lot of times it seems here in the States that people are saying, wow, the previous year, thank God it's over. But man, what lies ahead in the coming year? Is it going to be even worse? I'm sad to say that, but that's been the overall feeling in the United States. Not as believers, as followers of Jesus, we're supposed to retain that optimism. We've got the peace that surpasses all understanding. We've got the reason for the hope that's in us, like the Apostle Peter said. But nonetheless, there's been a feeling, a grim feeling. I hate to say it many times here in the States over the years, but for the first time in a long time, there seems to be a general sense of optimism in the country, and that Donald Trump dodged a bullet on July 13th, and we dodged a bullet as a nation on November 5th. And I think it's a miracle of God Almighty. And again, a golden opportunity that we dare not squander. It's revival or bust ultimately in America. But that's my little preamble here coming out of Thanksgiving and just some of the thoughts running through my head over this Thanksgiving holiday. But as we were taking a few days off here in the States, the Middle East was igniting, or should I say igniting to an even greater degree than it already has. But Syria, folks, in case you haven't heard, is on fire right now. The flames had been doused to a degree, I guess you would say, over the past 4 years or so in Syria. But now things are full scale, 100% large magnitude civil war level once again in that country, at Israel's doorstep, 49 days before Donald Trump takes office. So we want to break down what's happening in Syria, the various players there, and why it matters to you, no matter where you live. Also, surprise, surprise, I know this comes as a great shock to our viewers. You're never going to believe it. Hezbollah has broken the ceasefire with Israel. I know you're shocked, and you thought that Hezbollah was such a trustworthy actor and an honest broker, or not. Now, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, obviously. We have the most educated audience on YouTube, I like to say, my watchmen and women on the wall. But I'm not tongue in cheek when I refer to the Biden administration, which helped broker this deal, which strong-armed, pressured Israel. Strong-armed is probably not the right word for this administration. They pressured Israel. Anything strong in relation to this administration, probably not a good choice of words, but certainly pressured Israel to come to this ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah. And now, lo and behold, it's not going so well so far. And we're going to talk about that. And Israel is striking back in Lebanon. Man, that wasn't very long. What, 5 days? Day before Thanksgiving, I believe, the ceasefire deal went into effect. We want to talk about that. And the big breaking item here, Donald Trump. And I said at the top that, look, it's a new day in the United States. At least it feels that way for sure. And again, we could squander it. God forbid that we do. But there's certainly a feeling that a tide has turned, and it feels like there's been a shift in this country where the madness we've seen over the past 4 years on so many levels, the gender madness, the border madness, the anti-Semitic madness, the weakness in so many ways, Donald Trump appears to be ready to take a battering ram to that. And he's assembling a pretty formidable cabinet that's going to help him do just that come January 20th. Now, we need to be in prayer for the next 49 days that there's no shenanigans, no craziness before the inauguration on January 20th. We saw an example of that last night as Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter, an unconditional pardon of Hunter, not only for the immediate crimes that were committed, tax evasion and a gun charge that he was almost going to be sentenced for. It was December 15th, 16th. The sentencing was set for those two offenses. But no, dating back to 2014, any offense, that's when Joe Biden was vice president. Very interesting. Anything done by Hunter between 2014 and December 1st, yesterday, 2024. That's nearly 11 years that he's now magically pardoned for. But I say all that to say, that's the kind of madness that's gone on these 4 years. It culminated in the pardon last night by Joe Biden of Hunter. But the prayer is here in the States that that's about to be soundly overturned. That kind of nonsense. I don't think Trump could overturn the pardon. I'm saying in general that there's a massive pushback here. I've said Trump needs to be like a Josiah. That's a heavy comparison, I know, but King Josiah tore down the high places, and there were many in Israel, and that needs to be done in the United States now. One of them, and I alluded to this a minute ago, the anti-Semitic madness, one of them would be the weakness, the appeasement in the foreign policy realm, which leads me to the big breaking story today, Donald Trump's threat, and I do mean threat, against Hamas to release all hostages. Remember, I think there's 4 or 5 U.S. citizens, Americans, who are still held hostage. So Donald Trump has a vested interest there, but he wants to see the release of all hostages. And he met last night, by the way, with Sarah Netanyahu, Bibi's wife. He had dinner with her in Mar-a-Lago, a side note there, but Trump issued a very strong statement, needless to say, to Hamas. And it harkened back for me. We're about to show you the statement, and I'll read it and we'll break it down. But it harkened back to me, folks, to 1981, January 1981. I was a young pup then, about 5 years old. But Ronald Reagan, he took office, and voila, the Iranian regime released 52 American hostages that day, the day of Reagan's inauguration, after 444 days in captivity. And the abject weakness of Jimmy Carter, the Iranian regime said, new sheriff in town. And on the day of Reagan's inauguration, they released the U.S. hostages. That was not a coincidence. That was the very definition of peace through strength. And Donald Trump is very much a peace through strength kind of guy. And so could we see the hostages released on January 20th or before January 20th? Now that Donald Trump has said what he has said, we're going to break down what he said. We're going to show it to you in a minute. Before I do, quick reminder to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Folks, look, we are coming to you usually. Holidays get a little crazy, and there was no big, massive event that I just had to come to you, although Syria is pretty big, as we'll discuss. But usually, we're coming to you at least 5 days a week. So you want to make sure to subscribe and not miss a single video here. Click the notification bell as well. Also, quick shout out to our partner for today's live stream. Today is Cyber Monday. Big, obviously, Christmas shopping day. The Christmas season is upon us. Hanukkah also for our Jewish friends, December 26th, a little late this year with Hanukkah. But Artza, our dear friends, they're our partner today, artzabox.com. Visit there for your subscription to the Artza boxes, which are incredible. I mean, coming to your doorstep, an incredible taste of literally in some cases, a taste of the Holy Land, the sights, the sounds, the smells of Israel delivered to your doorstep in these beautiful handcrafted Artza boxes. Now, these are products in every Artza box, and the subscription this month is a Christmas box, a special holiday-themed Artza box. These are products made in Israel by Israeli small businesses and Israeli artisans. Why is that so important? Well, in case you haven't noticed, Israel's economy has taken a massive hit in the past 13 months or so due to the 14 now, due to the October 7th massacre and the ensuing wars that Israel has had to wage against Hamas and Hezbollah in the north, in the south. We've had tens of thousands of Israelis evacuated from their homes. That's had a massive impact on the economy. The complete shutdown, essentially, of tourism has also had a massive impact. And Israel is the size of the state of New Jersey. Helpful reminder. So when Israel has entire regions of its tiny nation shut down, it's an economic disaster. That's where you come in. That's where Artza comes in, supporting small businesses and all businesses in Israel. Artza is not only an Israeli-owned company, but it is working with other Israeli businesses and artisans to put out these beautiful Artza boxes and deliver them to your doorstep. Number one, this is Israel's time of greatest need, folks, and Hanukkah is nearly upon us. And you're fulfilling that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 to bless the people of Israel, again, in their time of greatest need. And number two, you get the Watchman discount. Just use the discount code Watchman, that's MAN, for a 10% discount off your Artza box subscription. Again, it's artzabox.com. I can't think of a better gift, by the way, for the Israel lover in your home. What a special, unique gift, right? If you've never been to Israel or you've been there and you haven't been able to get back, it's tough to get to Israel right now. Flights being canceled and only El Al, only one airline really going back and forth for the most part. The Artza box is the perfect way to get your Israel fix for such a time as this. Artzabox.com, Cyber Monday today, 10% discount. Use the code Watchman, MAN. Okay, Donald Trump never had a loss for words, as we know. But yesterday, a little background here, and I want to get the name right here. Adon Alexander, I believe, is the name of the hostage. There was a hostage video released. Yes, Adon Alexander, a hostage video released yesterday by Hamas. Propaganda video showing an American citizen who was still held hostage in Gaza. Adon Alexander, 20 years old, of New Jersey. He's been held captive for 422 days by Hamas. He was taken hostage on October 7th. In the video that Hamas, it's a heavily edited 3.5-minute video that Hamas released yesterday. He appears gaunt and under distress as he asks Israeli and American leaders to help free him and the other 100 hostages remaining in Hamas captivity. His family obviously is distraught. He says on the video with a Hamas gun to his head, time is running out. Every day in captivity is an eternity of suffering, physically and emotionally. He was an Israeli soldier stationed near Gaza when he was taken hostage. And he was among 250 people who were kidnapped on October 7th, of course. Now, some 100 hostages remain, including Adon, in captivity. But folks, remember, it's estimated at least 50 of them may be dead. So Hamas still has their remains in its clutches. But the prayer is that some 50 at least are still alive, and Adon is among them. So Hamas releases this video yesterday. Was that some sort of message to the incoming administration? We don't know. But here's how Donald Trump responded. And to say it was a breath of fresh air after 14 months of appeasement by the Biden-Harris administration is an understatement. Here's what Trump said, quote, "Everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action. Ain't that the truth? Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, the date that I will proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be, capital letters, all hell to pay in the Middle East. And for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now." Now, if we learn one thing about Donald Trump during his first term, it's that he doesn't mess around, and that when he makes a promise, he keeps it. And you might not like to hear that. You might say, oh, he's a bad guy. Well, guess what? He promised to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and he did it. He promised to crush ISIS, the caliphate in the Middle East, and he did it. And he promised that he had red lines when it came to Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and he kept the red lines. And we could go on. And he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, which he had also promised to do. And he secured the southern border here in the United States, which he had promised to do. You may not like him personally, and I'll get comments here. Oh, you're a Trump fan. All that but you can't argue with the fact that the man kept his word and did what he said he was going to do. So if I'm Hamas and Hamas's masters in Iran, I'm not taking the statement that Donald Trump made today on social media, on his Truth social media account. I'm not taking that lightly. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting up and taking notice. Now, as I look at this statement, Trump says, number one, it's all talk and no action, clearly referring to the current administration in the United States. Why didn't Joe Biden, somebody pointed this out earlier to me, why didn't Joe Biden issue a statement like this on October 8th, 2023, once the full scope of the Hamas massacre became clear? once it became clear that there were several Americans taken hostage, why wouldn't Biden release this kind of statement saying, release the hostages now or we will unleash hell on you? Seems to me that would have gone a long way. But instead, it was hemming and hawing and begging and rarely mentioning the U.S. hostages that were held and pressuring Israel at every turn to not do what needed to be done to get the hostages back. It's been a disaster. So Trump cuts through the clutter and says, release the hostages or I will unleash hell. America, the United States military, you're going to be hit like no one else has been hit. And again, based on the first term of Trump, which, I mean, honestly, the man was governing under duress, constant indictments and investigations and attempts to impeach and madness and lies, a demonic assault against the man in his first term. And he still accomplished a whole lot. Again, if I'm Hamas and Hamas's masters in Iran, I'm not feeling very good about this statement. Now, what's left of Hamas, we should say. Hamas is a ragtag. At this point, essentially, its leadership's been smashed, its rocket capabilities. Israel, when Trump says all talk and no action, he's not referring to Israel, by the way. He's referring to the world, the Western world, the UN, which has been impotent in the face of the continued hostage crisis in Gaza. But Israel has done the job and weakened Hamas to a degree where Hamas right now is essentially a ragtag guerrilla force that can no longer mount an attack like it did on October 7th. And Hezbollah is going into the ragtag direction as well. Not as weakened as Hamas, but severely weakened. Hezbollah will never be the same. And we'll talk more about Israel ensuring that Hezbollah will never be the same via enforcing this ceasefire in a second. But clearly, Trump has laid down the gauntlet now. And now he has no choice. He's laid down the gauntlet. This is what he does. And if Hamas does not comply, Trump's a man of his word. He's shown. He's going to have to do it. He's going to have to go in. He's going to have to hit hard and make some kind of attempt to get the hostages back, it seems to me. There's no in between right now. Hamas foolishly has put its necks out there and said, look, we're not going to release the hostages. Trump saying, oh, yeah. Trump has called their bluff, essentially. And now something will be done. You can guarantee one way or the other come January 20th. Now, does that extend to Iran is a big question here, because the Iranian regime is the head of the snake, as we all know. Does this extend to them? What does this mean for Iran? Is Trump's threat here not only directed towards Hamas and Islamic Jihad, but he says there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East, and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. Now, much of those in charge in Hamas and Islamic Jihad have been killed already by Israel. Who is really in charge of the perpetration of these atrocities? The puppet master, Hamas, of course, Hamas, Islamic Jihad. But October 7th doesn't happen without Iranian funding, support, arming, and training. A few weeks before October 7th, we had 500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives in Iran training. Again, all a coincidence, I'm sure. But who is ultimately, quote, in charge for not only October 7th, but for the terror throughout the region? That would be the Iranian regime. And guess what? The regime right now is being hit on another front. In Syria, jihadi versus jihadi, two sides of the same coin, essentially, with some theological differences, of course, Shia versus Sunni, but both sides evil, and they're clashing in Syria. I want to talk about that in a minute. But real quick, I mentioned Hezbollah, that ceasefire. And just an update there, because I know, again, that you're just completely shocked. I'm kidding, that Hezbollah broke the ceasefire. But here's the latest. The IDF has launched, just reading this from the Times of Israel straight off my phone. The IDF has launched a wave of strikes in Lebanon after a Hezbollah mortar attack. Hezbollah says its first fire since the truce went into effect last week is, quote, an initial warning against Israel over continued violation of Lebanese airspace. The Israeli military launched the attacks after Hezbollah launched two mortars at the Mount Dov area in northern Israel, for the first time since the ceasefire between Israel and the Iran-backed terror group took effect last week. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces said fighter jets struck Hezbollah operatives and dozens of rocket launchers and facilities belonging to the terror group across Lebanon. The incident was the first big flare-up. The U.S. and France are warning Israel. So the U.S. and France are warning Israel that it is violating the deal. And Israel said, are you nuts? Hezbollah is not allowed to, as terms of the ceasefire, Hezbollah is not permitted to travel south of the Litani River, which is some 18 miles north of the Israel-Lebanon border. And already there's reports that Hezbollah has been doing it and violating the ceasefire. And Israel said, look, we told you there would be a zero tolerance policy. If you break the ceasefire, we're going to hit you. Israel's keeping its word. Again, Israeli leaders, military and in the political sphere, said to Hezbollah in no uncertain terms, if you dare break one facet of this ceasefire, we're going to hit you and send a message. That's what Israel's done. Bravo to Israel. And again, talk about the antithesis of what I just read a minute ago, the Donald Trump statement towards terrorists and the Biden-Harris behavior, condemning Israel. You're violating the ceasefire. Basically, they're saying, look, we have no expectations of Hezbollah at all. We know they're evil. They're going to break ceasefire. But Israel, we're going to hold you to account instead. That is the entire Biden-Harris Middle East policy in a nutshell. Blame the victim. And I'm loath to call Israel a victim. Israel's anything but a victim. Israel stands strong and never has succumbed to that mentality. But Israel has been the target, let's say, of the relentless, demonic, obsessive, jihadi terror attacks by Hezbollah, Hamas, and engineered by the Iranian regime. Israel is the solution to the madness in the Middle East, not the problem. Yet the Biden-Harris administration, France, Emmanuel Macron, predictably, are pointing the finger at Israel and holding Israel accountable, or attempting to at least. It's madness. It's morally bankrupt. It's moral rot. This is the West today, a once great civilization, the Judeo-Christian Western civilization that was built over centuries, where the gospel went out for centuries, that liberated, where freedom rang. This is what's left. Look at the UK right now. I could go on, and we will go on, I'm sure, in future live streams. But the United States right now has, again, a golden opportunity to be, once again, that shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. That is a beacon of light and sanity in the darkness. We have the opportunity, again, I'll say it for the third time on this live stream, because I keep thinking about it. We dare not squander it. To whom much is given, much is required. It's biblical. Okay, Syria real quick. You might be wondering what the heck is going on in Syria, because it had been, the civil war end of it had been relatively quiet. Syria has been anything but quiet, but the civil war end of it, meaning Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, fighting against the various ISIS, Al-Qaeda-linked Sunni jihadis in Syria with Turkish involvement, it had kind of died down a bit over the past few years, especially since 2020. And we'd settled into this kind of uneasy sense of normalcy where, look, Assad with Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah backing him controlled about 75% of the country. The rebels were mostly in the northwest of Syria and not too active other than in Idlib. But now Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria, has been overrun by these Sunni jihadis linked to Al-Qaeda, ISIS. We don't have, enough time to get into this too much, folks, but Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS for short, came out of Al-Qaeda, ISIS links. These are Sunni jihadis, not to get too in the weeds, and with Turkish backing. That's one faction. Then you have, of course, the Iran, Assad, Russia faction. And then you have the Kurds. So you really have three factions there, and the Kurds backed by the United States. You have three factions there going at each other. The long and short of it is that these Sunni jihadis were certainly emboldened by Israel's thumping, its shellacking of Iran and its proxies over the past few months. They see an opening. They see, number one, look, Iran, Syria, I used to say that Hezbollah was too big to fail, and it still is in Iran's view, but too late there. But Syria, certainly in Iran's view, in its ideological framework, is too big to fail, in that Syria is the transit point for Iran to send weapons to Hezbollah and Lebanon. They must go through Syria. That's why Iran went all in a decade ago in saving Assad's hide. That's why Iran called Russia in 2015 to save Assad's hide. And by the way, Russia's there and not going anywhere. They've got their claws in the Middle East, and they like it to be in the region once again and to project power. But Iran said, no, no, no. Syria is irreplaceable. Assad is irreplaceable for us, because if the Sunni jihadis get in power, well, they're not going to give us carte blanche to ship weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Again, they have to go through Syria. It's a lot easier to go that way than via the Mediterranean. So that's why Iran went all in the first place in saving Assad's hide. Now Iran is just not positioned. I mean, number one, Hezbollah has been shellacked. They're maybe at 30% capacity of what they were before September 17th, when Israel went all in attacking Hezbollah. They don't really have the assets, the manpower to devote to defending Assad right now in Syria. Ceasefire or no ceasefire. And then Iran itself has suffered a horrible, for them, loss of prestige and strength in recent months. Not only have they seen a ring of fire unravel surrounding Israel, look, their air defenses, Israel has completely wiped out. They've lost some key figures in the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the elite vanguard of the Iranian regime. So what you have is a severely weakened Iranian regime and Hezbollah by extension. And Assad's looking around and saying, uh-oh. And the rebels have swept through Aleppo. Who knows where they'll go next? Hama is another place. Are they on the road to Damascus? We don't know. But I think the wild card here, two wild cards. Number one, Turkey, where Turkey backs these Sunni jihadis. And number two, Russia, which backs Assad. Are there back channels between Russia and Turkey right now? I'm sure there are, where they're discussing some sort of third way here, where Assad is preserved and the jihadis maybe hold some ground that they've taken over the past week. Assad wouldn't be happy about that, of course, especially a major city like Aleppo. But are Russia and Turkey going to try and broker something? I'd be surprised to see open hostilities. I don't mean military, but just hostilities between Russia and Turkey, because they've gone a long way towards patching up their relationship in recent years. And I believe it does have prophetic implications, that Turkey, Russia, and Iran, of course, relationship, Ezekiel implications, as we've talked about here. But let's see how this plays out in the next few days. Does Russia, look, I've talked about Iran and Hezbollah being constrained and limited in what they can do for Assad to defend him. What can Russia do right now as it's tied up in Ukraine? Does Russia really want to go all in Syria? How important is Assad? We know how important he is to Iran. But now that Hezbollah is so weakened and Iran's whole strategy has been blown out the window. Yes, Iran wants to rearm Hezbollah, and already the IDF and the Israeli Air Force are threatening Iranian planes that have attempted to funnel in new weapons to Hezbollah. That's going to be a non-starter. Iran's not going to let them rearm. So that puts a major hole in Iran's future strategy, perhaps, if it had any intent to rebuild Hezbollah in the Ring of Fire, which I'm sure it does, but man, it's going to take a while. But number two, Russia. Russia's got a warm water port in Tartus on the Mediterranean Sea. And Russia has interest there in Syria. I guess the question is, how important is saving Assad's hide a second time, and just Syria in general for their various geopolitical aims and goals? How important is it to Russia and Iran? Will they go all in to save Assad this time? And what about Turkey? What's Turkey's end game here? What's Erdogan's goal, the Turkish tyrant? Because look, he'd been making noise about kind of making the peace with Assad. What's his end game here? A lot to unpack. It can be confusing. I know, folks, we're trying to make it as simple as we can for you. A lot to unpack. What does it mean for Israel? Look, it's not a good thing. On one hand, it's a good thing to see Assad, Iran, and Hezbollah weakened, all enemies of the Jewish state, but not exactly a good thing to see Sunni jihadis with Al-Qaeda and ISIS links come to power, needless to say. So what does it mean for Israel? What does it mean for the United States? What's Donald Trump's tack going to be towards Syria? A lot to unpack. If you thought things were going to calm down in the Middle East because of a ceasefire in Lebanon, a very shaky one, as I just laid out, think again. The world's most chaotic and volatile region continues to also be the world's most strategic region. We'll have a lot to talk about here in the days and years to come, I'm sure, here on the live stream. And that includes tomorrow with more updates. Until then, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back.